Sir, this section is reserved for business class passengers. You may have taken the wrong seat. The man she spoke to, mid-40s, calm, quietly dignified, simply looked up, confusion in his eyes. He checked his ticket, the one clearly marked, Seat 2A Business Class. But before he could say a word, she added, I understand mistakes happen, but please, economy is just behind that curtain. The silence that followed was deafening. A few passengers turned their heads, some whispering, others pretending not to notice. But you could feel the tension twist in the air. She didn't know. No one on that flight knew. The man she just humiliated owned the airline. Before the day was over, her name would be echoing through the corridors of corporate headquarters. Not for praise, but for a reason she'd never forget. But the real story, the reason why this moment mattered, the reason people still talk about it years later, isn't just about karma or revenge. It's about what happens when judgment meets power in disguise. Because this isn't just a story about a man who got the last laugh. It's about a world where respect is tested when no one's watching. If this is your first time on our channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because stories like this, stories that expose truth, ego, and humanity, are what we do best. His name was Andrew Collins, and on paper, he was the last person you'd expect to be sitting quietly in a business class seat, dressed in simple business attire. He didn't look like a CEO. He didn't need to. Andrew had started from nothing, literally nothing. Born in a small neighborhood on the south side of Atlanta, his mother worked 2 jobs while raising him and his younger sister. He grew up watching planes streak across the sky, promising a freedom that always seemed out of reach. By the time he was 15, he'd decided, one day he wouldn't just fly, he'd own something that flew. And decades later, he did. Orion Air, one of the fastest-growing regional airlines in the US, was his vision, his fight, his victory. But today, he wasn't Andrew the CEO. He wasn't Andrew the public figure with tailored suits and investors on speed dial. Today, he was just a tired traveler. He'd spent the week visiting remote airports and frontline staff, doing what he always did best, seeing what really went on when the boss wasn't around. And as fate would have it, that decision led him right into this moment. He boarded that flight not as the man who signed paychecks, but as one of thousands who depended on the system he built. And now, he was about to see what that system had become. Sir, I need you to move now. Her tone sharpened. The flight attendant, Maria Jennings, was used to obedience. She'd been working with Orion Air for 7 years, and she carried herself like she ran the cabin. Andrew looked at her again, calm but firm. I think there's a mistake, he said softly, offering his ticket. Seat 2A. She took it, barely glancing at the name. Aha, she said, frowning. Yes, this seat is 2A, but, sir, this is a business class fare. These seats are reserved for premium customers only. He blinked. I am a premium customer. Maria's lips tightened into a thin smile that was anything but friendly. Of course you believe that, but these seats are assigned only to our Orion Platinum members or our business travelers. She said it slowly, as though explaining a rule to a child. A few passengers were watching now. One woman shook her head in quiet embarrassment. Another whispered to her husband. Andrew could feel the weight of their stares, the familiar kind. The kind that said, he doesn't belong here. He could have ended it right there. He could have pulled out his phone, called the chief operating officer, or texted the pilot by name. Both were under his payroll. But he didn't. Not yet. Because there was something more powerful in watching people reveal who they truly were when they thought no one important was watching. Ma'am, he said evenly, I assure you this is my seat. Can we please resolve this quietly? Maria crossed her arms, letting out an audible sigh. Sir, I have other passengers to attend to. Please don't make this difficult. He leaned back slightly, still calm. I'm not the one making it difficult. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? The cabin went silent. For a moment, all you could hear was the hum of the air conditioning and the shuffle of boarding passengers. Maria turned abruptly, muttering something to her colleague, a younger attendant named Jenna. Jenna looked at the ticket, her expression flickering with uncertainty. Maria, Jenna whispered. "The seat's correct. His name's right here on the manifest." But Maria waved her off. "I'll handle it." She marched back to Andrew, voice raised just enough for the nearby passengers to hear. "If you don't move, I'll have security escort you to the proper section." Andrew tilted his head. "You'd call security? Over a confirmed business class ticket?" She didn't answer. She turned and gestured to the front, where 2 airport staff stood at the door, still guiding passengers aboard. "Excuse me," she called out. "We've got a seating issue." That's when the murmurs began. "That's crazy," someone whispered. Another voice. He showed her his ticket, but Maria didn't care. She was too caught up in maintaining control, too proud to admit she might have made a mistake. The 2 security agents, one male, one female, came over. "What seems to be the issue?" the man asked. Maria gestured toward Andrew. "This passenger insists he's in business class, but the fare and appearance don't match our usual profiles. Could you please verify and have him move to economy if necessary?" Appearance. That word hung in the air like smoke. Andrew felt something cold rise in his chest. He had heard that tone before. Not on airplanes, but in boardrooms, banks, and restaurants that pretended to be welcoming. The security officer took the ticket, scanned it, then looked up. "It's valid. Seat 2A. Paid in full." Maria's cheeks twitched. There must be a mistake. Maybe he upgraded improperly? The officer shrugged. "Not my call." Andrew exhaled slowly, still composed. "Is it all right if I take my seat now?" Maria's lips parted, but she said nothing. The officer nodded and walked off. Passengers whispered louder now, and a woman across the aisle muttered, "Unbelievable." Andrew placed his briefcase under the seat, buckled his belt, and closed his eyes. But inside he wasn't angry. He was observing. He thought of the diversity reports he'd read months ago, how customer-facing staff were adapting well to the company's inclusion training. He thought of the slogans plastered across Orion's social media. "We treat everyone like they belong." He had believed them. Now he was seeing the truth. And this was only the beginning, because by the time this flight landed, everything about Orion Air's perfect reputation would change. Starting with one flight attendant who had no idea who she had just humiliated. The plane had leveled off above the clouds, the world below fading into a sea of white. Most passengers settled in, drinks poured, laptops opened, soft chatter rising. But the air between Maria and Andrew was still thick. From the corner of his eye, Andrew could see her glaring now and then, her movements sharp, deliberate. She'd glance at him like a thorn in her routine, something she couldn't remove but refused to ignore. "Would you like something to drink?" her colleague Jenna asked kindly as she came down the aisle. "Yes, please. Just water," Andrew replied with a gentle smile. But before Jenna could even pour it, Maria's voice cut through like a blade. "Jenna, don't serve that yet. We're prioritizing passengers with premium meal reservations first." Jenna hesitated, glancing between them. "Maria, he is a premium passenger." Maria forced a laugh. "Please, we both know what's going on here." Then, lowering her voice, "But not enough," she added, "Next time, maybe he'll check his seat before causing a scene." The words hung in the air. Andrew felt the heat of humiliation crawl up his neck. Not because of what she said, but because of how casually she said it. Like it was nothing. Like he was nothing. He noticed how nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably. A man in a suit frowned. A woman across the aisle folded her arms and whispered, "That's just wrong." Maria pretended not to notice. Andrew finally opened his eyes and looked straight at her. "You're having a bad day," he said quietly. "I'll give you the grace you won't give me." Her eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me," but he was already turning back to his laptop, opening a folder named Orion, Internal Evaluation Reports. He didn't type anything. He just stared at the company's logo glowing on his screen. His reflection mirrored faintly against it. That logo was his. He had built the company, from one regional route to one of the top 3 private airlines in the country. But what most people didn't know was that Andrew Harper had deliberately stayed out of the public eye. He let others be the face, the CEOs, the board members, the PR managers. He preferred quiet ownership. But right now, silence had its limits. Maria walked past again, still pretending to ignore him. When turbulence hit and the seatbelt sign flicked on, she took the opportunity to check on everyone, except him. Andrew noticed. So did everyone else. One man leaned over. "Sir, I just want to say, what she's doing isn't right." Andrew smiled faintly. "Thank you for saying that." He looked back out the window, watching the clouds roll like waves. He remembered his mother's words from years ago, when he was still working odd jobs to pay for flight school. "Son, you'll learn fast. The sky doesn't care what color you are, but the people in it might." He had laughed then, thinking she was exaggerating. Now, her words felt carved into the air itself. Hours passed. The flight neared its descent. The mood in the cabin lightened, except for Maria, who now avoided his row altogether. When the landing gear touched down and applause filled the cabin, Andrew calmly shut his laptop. He stood, waited for the seatbelt sign to go off, and watched as Maria prepared to say goodbye to passengers at the exit. Her voice was sweet again now, polished for landing. "Thank you for flying Orion Air. Have a great evening." When Andrew approached, she stiffened. "Sir," she said curtly, "I hope everything was tolerable." "Tolerable," he repeated, almost amused. "That's one word for it." She folded her arms. "If you have any complaints, feel free to submit them to customer service." "Oh, I intend to," he replied calmly. "In fact, I'll take it directly to the top." She smirked. "Good luck getting their attention." Andrew smiled faintly, the kind of smile that made her uneasy without knowing why. "Oh, I'm sure they'll listen." And with that, he picked up his briefcase and stepped off the plane. What happened next would become the talk of Orion Air's entire headquarters. Because within 24 hours, the same flight attendant who mocked him in front of passengers would find herself summoned. Not by her manager, not by HR, but by the very man she humiliated. The morning after the flight, Maria strutted into Orion Air headquarters with a cup of coffee and a smirk. Her shift supervisor, Mr. Daniels, had called her in for an urgent review regarding an incident. She barely flinched. "Probably about that rude passenger," she told herself. "They always side with them." As she approached the glass doors, she admired her reflection. Uniform crisp, hair flawless, every inch the confident professional she believed herself to be. The receptionist at the front desk smiled politely. "Good morning, Maria. You're expected in conference room 3. Maria nodded, tossing her hair. "Let's get this over with." Inside, she found Jenna, her co-attendant from the flight, sitting quietly with her hands folded. Across from her was Mr. Daniels, flipping through a report. And at the far end of the table, a tall man in a dark navy suit, back turned to them as he looked out the window at the runway. Something about his stance felt familiar. Mr. Daniels cleared his throat. "Maria, please have a seat." She sat down, crossing one leg over the other. "I assume this is about that passenger from flight 2087? Jenna glanced up nervously. Mr. Daniels hesitated. "Yes, it is. There have been some serious concerns raised." Maria scoffed. "Concerns?" He made a scene over nothing. He thought sitting in business class entitled him to act like. "Enough," the man by the window said. His voice was calm, deep, controlled. Maria froze. The tone sent a strange chill through her. When he turned around, her stomach dropped. It was him, the same man from the flight, the one she'd mocked, ignored, dismissed. Her jaw fell open. "You!" Andrew Harper smiled faintly, buttoning his suit jacket. "Good morning, Miss Sanchez." Mr. Daniels immediately stood. "Mr. Harper, sir. I didn't realize you'd be attending." Andrew raised a hand. "I like to handle certain matters personally." The silence was crushing. Maria blinked rapidly, her brain trying to make sense of what she was seeing. "Mr. Harper?" she stammered. "Wait, are you saying you're that Harper?" He nodded slowly. "Andrew Harper, founder and owner of Orion Air." The color drained from her face. Her coffee cup trembled in her hand before she set it down, spilling drops onto the table. I didn't know, she said weakly. You didn't say anything. Andrew tilted his head. Should I have? She opened her mouth, closed it again. I thought you were. He cut her off gently. You thought I was what, Maria? A mistake in the seating chart? Someone who didn't belong there. Her eyes darted to the floor. Andrew took a slow breath, pacing the room. You see, Maria, I created Orion Air because I wanted an airline that treated every passenger with dignity. Not one that judged people by appearance, accent, or background. He paused, his voice tightening. I built this company on respect. But what I saw on that flight was the exact opposite. Maria swallowed hard. Sir, Andrew raised a hand again. Please, let me finish. He turned to Jenna. Jenna, thank you for how you handled things yesterday. I've read the passenger statements, yours included. You represented Orion well. Jenna nodded silently, tears welling in her eyes. Andrew turned back to Maria. You, on the other hand, treated a passenger with open contempt. You embarrassed the company, yourself, and by extension, every employee who works hard to earn trust in the skies. Maria's throat tightened. I didn't mean to offend you personally. It's not about me, he interrupted. It's about how you see people. He walked closer, voice lowering. You saw a man who didn't fit your image of wealth or status. You assumed he didn't belong in a premium seat. You decided to make that assumption his reality. The room fell silent. Even Mr. Daniels shifted uncomfortably. Andrew looked at him next. How many complaints has she had before? Mr. Daniels hesitated, flipping through his tablet. 3 prior, all related to passenger conduct, but none this serious. Andrew nodded slowly. Then this one will be her last. Maria's head shot up. Wait, what? You're firing me? Andrew met her gaze. Steady, calm, but cold. Effective immediately. Her lip trembled. Please, Mr. Harper, I've worked here for years. This job is my life. He didn't flinch. Then maybe you should have treated it, and the people who make it possible, like it mattered. He turned to Jenna. You're dismissed. Thank you. Jenna stood, hesitating for a second before whispering, Thank you, sir, and walking out quietly. Maria sat frozen, chest rising and falling rapidly. Andrew picked up his briefcase. Security will escort you out. HR will handle your exit paperwork. When he started to walk past her, she whispered, You humiliated me. He stopped at the door and turned slightly. No, Maria, you humiliated yourself. I just refused to look away. And with that, he walked out, leaving her in stunned silence. Hours later, the Orion Air headquarters was quiet. The rush of meetings and chatter had faded, leaving only the low hum of ventilation and the distant echo of footsteps in the hallway. Andrew Harper sat alone in his corner office, the same one that overlooked the runway, where planes lifted into the clouds like dreams chasing freedom. He rested his hand on the window pane, watching one of his jets taxi toward takeoff. A small smile touched his lips. Every time he watched a plane rise, he thought about people, the passengers, the stories, the invisible lives beneath the surface. Because that was what had built Orion Air, the belief that everyone deserved to be treated with respect, whether they sat in first class or the last seat near the bathroom. And today had tested that belief more than ever. He leaned back in his chair, remembering the look on Maria's face, that mixture of disbelief and regret when she realized who he was. But it wasn't satisfaction he felt. It was sadness, because he didn't fire her to prove a point. He did it to remind everyone, including himself, that titles and money don't excuse cruelty. He thought about the message he wanted Orion Air to represent. Then, quietly, he pressed the intercom button. Claire, he said to his assistant, schedule an all-staff meeting for tomorrow morning. I want every employee, every department head, and every crew member there. The next morning, the main auditorium was filled with employees, pilots, flight attendants, engineers, even janitors. Andrew stood on the stage in front of them, dressed in a business suite. He looked around the room before he spoke. "Yesterday," he began, "something happened that reminded me why I started this company." The room fell silent. He continued, "A passenger was treated unfairly, not because of what he did, not because he broke a rule, but because of how he looked. And that," he paused, his voice tightening, "is something we cannot and will not tolerate." He let the words sink in before going on. "I went undercover on that flight, not to test you," he said, "but to understand you, to see how our people treat others when no one's watching." He took a step forward. "And while some of you showed compassion and professionalism, others showed arrogance, impatience, and bias." A few attendants lowered their heads. Andrew's gaze softened. "We serve thousands of passengers a day, different races, languages, beliefs, and dreams. The moment we start deciding who deserves respect is the moment we stop deserving this job." He paused again, his voice now calm but firm. "Excellence isn't about luxury. It's about dignity." The employees listened quietly, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a quiet truth that demanded reflection. Andrew gestured toward a large screen behind him. It lit up with the words, "The Orion Promise. Respect takes flight." "This," he said, "is our new training initiative. Every staff member, from top to bottom, will go through empathy and equality workshops. I don't care if you've been here 20 years or 2 weeks, we will learn to see people again." Applause began slowly, then grew until the entire room stood. Andrew smiled faintly. "We can't undo what's been done, but we can make sure it never happens again." When the meeting ended, several employees approached him quietly, thanking him for what he said, some even admitting they had caught themselves judging passengers in subtle ways. That night, Andrew returned home, exhausted but thoughtful. He sat on his balcony, watching the city lights blink beneath the stars. He thought of his mother, the woman who used to scrub office floors at night just to pay the bills. The woman who told him, "Don't ever treat people like they're beneath you, because you'll never know who you're looking down on." He smiled, whispering to the night, "You were right, Mom." And somewhere deep down, he knew this story. His story wasn't just about an airline or a flight attendant. It was about humanity, about how easy it is to forget that kindness costs nothing, and arrogance can cost everything. He picked up his phone and opened his company's social media account. Then, with a few taps, he posted a message that would soon go viral. "I once sat in a first-class seat and was treated like I didn't belong. I own the airline now. Let that be a reminder, respect everyone. You never know who you're speaking to." Within hours, the post spread across the internet. Thousands of comments poured in, people sharing their own experiences of being judged or underestimated. The story reached millions. News outlets picked it up, praising Orion Air for taking a stand against discrimination. But for Andrew, it wasn't about fame or headlines. It was about truth, the kind that humbles and transforms. As he leaned back and looked at the sky, a flight soared overhead. He watched its blinking lights fade into the night, his reflection in the window merging with the clouds. A soft smile touched his lips. "Here's to new beginnings," he murmured, "and to never forgetting where you came from." So, if you made it this far, here's the lesson. Never underestimate the power of respect. Titles can change, fortunes can rise, but character, that's what truly flies. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories like this one. See you in the next story.